Hello 7th grade students of SMBK Penanggung Jakarta. How are you today? It's very nice to see you again on our online learning. And today we are going to learn about the last chapter for this semester, which is the classification of living things. And especially we are going to discuss about taxonomy. Do you still remember about the 8 characteristics of living things? 8 characteristics that differentiate between non-living things and living things. Yes, we can find that living things are breathing, obtaining food, having adaptation, sensitive to stimulation, and other characters that we can find on the living things. Well, biologists have succeeded in creating a classification system based on the features found in living things. So beside the 8 characteristics of living things, there are also another features that we can find in living things itself. All living organisms are classified into groups based on very basic and common shared characteristics among those living things. Organisms within each group are then further divided into smaller groups. These smaller groups are based on more detailed characteristics such as their similarities and their differences within each larger group. This process is known as classification. You can see on your screen that this picture illustrates how biologists try to classify each organisms into their own group. This grouping system makes it easier for scientists to study a certain groups of organisms. The study of the classification of living things is called as taxonomy. Carolus Linnaeus is known as the pioneer of taxonomy. He even called as the father of taxonomy. The way he classified living things is still being used until today. The classification of living things includes 7 levels, or 7 taxonomic rank. The largest group is kingdom, and then followed by phylum, class, order, family, genus, and species. This is the example of the classification or the taxonomic rank for vulpes or red fox. Higher taxonomic rank will have more diverse organisms as its member. In other words, they share very general characteristics. Meanwhile, lower taxonomic rank will have more similar member of organisms. In other words, they share very specific characteristics. Now let's talk about binomial nomenclature. Living things have names. Especially in taxonomy, every living thing has a scientific name. Linnaeus used a naming system called binomial nomenclature to the scientific name of every living things. Binomial nomenclature, also known as double nomenclature system. Can you imagine? There will be a lot of confusion in using different languages for names, such as for this skunk. You can see every language has their own name for this organism. So, in order to handle these difficulties, scientists assign a binomial nomenclature in every living things. The rules of binomial nomenclature are: first, every living thing has a species name consisting of two Latin words. The first word indicates the genus, and its writing begins with an uppercase letter, while the second word indicates a species, and its writing begins with a lowercase letter. Lastly, write scientific names of living things in italics if typed, or underlined if handwritten. As I told you before, binomial nomenclature consists of genus name and followed by species name. For example, common name for this animal is lion. Meanwhile, the scientific name is Panthera leo, where Panthera is the genus and Leo is the species. So, name for this animal is Panthera leo. And here you can see another organisms. The common name for this organism is pebble crab. Meanwhile, the scientific name using the binomial nomenclature is Xanthias lamarckii. Xanthias show us the genus and lamarckii show us the species. You can discuss the binomial nomenclature furthermore with your teachers. Next is the identification key. An identification key, also known as a taxonomic key, is a useful tool for identifying unknown organisms in any taxon level or even specific to species. Keys are arranged dichotomously, which means such keys are written in pairs of contrast characteristics. The choice of one character leads to another pairs until the organism is identified. For example, when we want to identify a vertebrate, we can use this dichotomous key or this identification key. Using the identification key, when we found an animal, we can decide, does the animal has fur or it doesn't? If it has fur, well, we can classify them as mammals. Meanwhile, when it doesn't has fur, the identification key leads us to another dichotomous statement. Is it has feathers or is it doesn't has feather? Well, when it has feathers, then we can classify the animal as birds. Meanwhile, when it doesn't has feather, the identification leads us to another dichotomous statement. And the process will repeat it until we can classify that organism. You can try on your own to classify organism using identification key in the following worksheet. Next, we are going to discuss about kingdom. The most basic classification of living things is kingdoms. Currently, there are 5 kingdoms classified by Robert H. Whittaker. Living things are placed into certain kingdoms based on how they obtain their food, the types of cells that make up their body, and the number of cells they contain. In 5 kingdom system, we have Monera, Protista, Fungi, Plantae, and Animalia. And here are the characteristics for each type of kingdom in 5 kingdom classification. For this semester, we are going to discuss about the first 3 kingdoms, which are Monera, Protista, and Fungi. Well, that's all for the first video of this chapter. Thank you for your attention, and you can continue discuss the material with your teachers, and also please do the worksheet to evaluate your understanding on this topic. Goodbye and God bless you.